was an area manager at a chilled food distribution operation serving hospitals and care homes. During a heatwave, a supervisor proposed releasing 2 trailers whose temperature logs had a 40-minute gap so we could meet the hospital cutoff. I had to protect patient-facing quality standards while avoiding unnecessary disposal and service failure. I considered releasing on spot checks, rejecting both loads immediately, or quarantining them while reconstructing the full temperature evidence. I stopped release, checked independent pallet probes, called the refrigeration engineer, and traced the logger outage to a flat gateway battery rather than confirmed temperature loss. I kept both trailers quarantined, split urgent hospital lines, sourced verified stock from a nearby depot, and required quality, not operations, to approve any release. Transport highlighted £28,000 of spoilage exposure and escalating customers. I communicated the delay honestly and refused to treat absence of evidence as evidence of safe custody. When 6 pallets showed probe readings close to the limit, I rejected those pallets and released only stock with continuous corroborating evidence after quality approval. Before closing the action, I sampled performance across different shifts and demand conditions, so the result did not depend on one unusually experienced team or a quiet operating window. I translated the outcome into a simple frontline mechanism with a named owner, an escalation threshold, and a weekly measure, which made the change repeatable after I stepped away. I also documented the operating assumptions, named the owner for each follow-up action, and set a clear review date so that temporary controls could not quietly become permanent. I wrote the decision, assumptions, owners, and stop conditions on a 1-page control plan so the next shift could challenge the logic rather than rely on verbal context. I used both a leading indicator and a customer outcome measure that prevented a short-term productivity improvement from hiding quality, safety, or backlog age. During implementation, I stayed at the operating point for the first cycle, asked frontline employees what the mechanism missed, and changed only one variable at a time. I assigned named owners for each checkpoint and made escalation thresholds visible in the shift huddle, which reduced ambiguity when I was not physically present. After stabilization, I compared the result with the original baseline, checked for cost or defect displacement, and documented the mechanism for the other shifts. Before committing, I asked a supervisor who disagreed with me to identify the weakest assumption, then converted that concern into a measurable checkpoint rather than relying on consensus. I separated mandatory controls from preferences, which let the team move quickly without weakening the safety, quality, or customer promise that the operation existed to protect. For each alternative, I estimated the likely customer impact, labor requirement, operational reversibility, and worst credible failure, and I explained why my chosen path offered the best balance. I briefed affected teams before launch, checked understanding through questions rather than attendance, and made the escalation route clear to people working outside my shift. I also protected normal operations by defining which work would pause, which work would continue, and who could authorize expansion beyond the initial controlled scope. At every review point, I compared actual performance with the assumption that justified the decision. When they diverged, I changed the plan rather than defending the original recommendation. I made the cost of the choice visible as well as the benefit, because hiding overtime, rework, or displaced backlog would have made the result look stronger but less useful. Once the immediate issue was resolved, I held a short review with frontline representatives and partner teams, captured what failed in the original mechanism, and assigned permanent actions. All critical hospital orders arrived that day, no unsafe stock shipped, and disposal was limited to £4,600. We added battery alarms and a departure interlock. Missing log events fell from 7.25 to 0 for 6 months. High standards require a clear independent release mechanism and creative recovery around the standard, never reinterpretation of the standard to protect a metric.